On May 29, 2026, the National Bank of Ethiopia officially enacted a sweeping new regulatory framework known as Import on Franco Valuta Directive No. FVD 01/2026. So this directive completely overhauls how alternative foreign exchange enters the Ethiopian currency or the Ethiopian economy. So in international trade, the Franco Valuta arrangement allows merchants, investors, or individuals to import goods into a country without paying for them using a foreign exchange sourced from the domestic banking system. For years, this mechanism acted as a vital valve to keep essential goods flowing into the country without draining Ethiopia's highly guarded hard currency reserves. However, as the central bank explicitly outlines in the preamble, the historic lack of a modern, unified framework created substantial risks, including illicit financial flow, misreporting, and market fragmentation. So this new directive is designed to fix those exact loopholes by establishing a single, transparent roadmap that protects the national economy from a foreign exchange abuse, while still keeping the door open for productive trade. Let's look at how this policy directly impacts the three most critical audiences for this law: the diaspora community, the diaspora business owners, and the foreign direct investors. So Section 5 of this directive explicitly recognizes these groups as eligible users, but it completely removes the ambiguity around what they can bring into the country and how they must declare it. For the returning diasporas, meaning Ethiopian nationals permanently relocating home from abroad, the new rules are highly specific. You are permitted to import your personal and household effects on duty-free basis, but your shipment is strictly capped at a free on board value of 5,000 USD, United States dollar. So to clear customs, you must present a valid residence permit alongside of official authentication from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But for the members of the diaspora who run active, approved business in Ethiopia, the central bank is providing significantly more leverage. So the directive allows you to use Franco Valuta to import the essential capital goods and raw materials required during your business initial commissioning phase. Furthermore, your personal effects allowance is doubled to an FOB or free on board value of 10,000 USD, provided you hold an investment license from an appropriate government office to prove you are establishing a productive economic operation. The third groups are those foreign direct investors, and for the foreign direct investors, the directive strictly bifurcates permissible imports into two channels. The first ones are investment and the other one is commercial trading. So under Section 6, the government is heavily incentivizing productive capital assets. Foreign investors can utilize Franco Valuta to import heavy industrial machinery, spare parts, raw materials for manufacturing, and even specialized software for the agriculture and service sectors. It also fully covers equipment destined for both renewable and non-renewable energy infrastructure projects. However, if you are an FDI or foreign direct investor trader engaged in standard wholesale or retail distribution, Section 7 hitches your operations entirely to the regulation of the Ministry of Trade and Regional Integration, which means you will face much tighter restrictions unless you are operating directly within a designated special economic zone or free trade zone. So to fully grasp why these specific caps and rules exist, we need to quickly decode some fundamental rules of global trade. The directive repeatedly relies on the phrase FOB value. FOB stands for free on board, and it is an official component of Incoterms, which stands for International Commercial Terms. Think of Incoterms as the universal legal rule books for international shipping, and they dictate exactly when financial costs, physical liabilities transfer from a foreign seller to a domestic buyer. So when contract specifies an FOB arrangement at a foreign port, it means that the seller is responsible for the goods until they are physically loaded onto the cargo vessel. So the moment those items touch the ship, the buyer legally owns them and assumes all subsequent costs, including ocean freight, marine insurance, and also destination port taxes. Therefore, when the National Bank of Ethiopia states that your personal effects are capped at $5,000 or $10,000 FOB value, they are referring strictly to the wholesale costs of the item themselves, sitting on the boat, entirely excluding the expensive shipping fees or local duties added afterward. So understanding this helps to clarify how drastically Franco Valuta differs from Ethiopia's normal importing system. In a standard everyday commercial import cycle, a business cannot simply buy goods using an international credit card. So normally, an importer must secure a formal quote called a pro forma invoice from an overseas supplier and present it to the domestic commercial bank of Ethiopia or other commercial banks in Ethiopia. Then the importer pays the bank in the local currency and enters a heavily regulated queue, waiting for a central pool to allocate official foreign exchange, usually distributed via a secure mechanism like a letter of credit. So the bank handles the foreign currency transfer, the supplier ships the cargo, and the importer uses the resulting bill of lading to clear local customs. So under the Franco Valuta system, however, this entire banking queue is bypassed. The government essentially tells you that if you are already possessed legal external foreign currency sitting in an overseas account, or if you have a foreign relative financing the purchase directly, you may bypass the central bank's cash reserve and bring the goods in immediately, provided you log the transaction transparently through the state's updated digital networks. So this brings us to the compliance framework, where the directive draws its sharpest line in the sand. The era of manual paperwork and unmonitored alternative imports is officially dead. So under Section 10, the Ethiopian Customs Commission has fully launched a centralized digital watchdog system known as FEMoUS, the Foreign Exchange Monitoring and Orchestration Unified System. So every single Franco Valuta transaction must now be logged into the FEMoUS, rendering all imports digitally recorded and fully traceable from end to end. So to clear your goods, investors and traders must submit 3 mandatory documents through this system. The first one is the pro forma or the commercial invoice. The second one is the full shipping documents like a bill of lading or airway bill. And the third one is an active investment or trade license. So if you attempt to bypass this digital surveillance, the consequences are under Section 12, which are severe. Regulated violations include the misuse of Franco Valuta, making of false custom declarations, and attempting to circumvent the digital system entirely. So if you are caught, individuals and entities are going to face steep monetary penalties, the outright confiscation of the goods, and severe criminal liability under the National Bank of Ethiopia Proclamation No. 1359 of 2025. To keep a tight grip on consumer markets, the operational matrix attached to the directive sets very strict limit on non-commercial goods, gifts, and promotional trade items. So if you're a business importing commercial promotional items bearing your company logo, the total value is strictly capped at 5,000 United States dollars. And these items cannot be resold under any circumstances. Standard gifts, samples, and awards sent to individuals are also capped even lower at the FOB value of 4,000 United States dollar. However, the central bank has built in a necessary safety valve for critical operational emergencies. So under Section 21, Franco Valuta is permitted for goods urgently required for the normal operation of an institution or for an individual health where custom delays would cause severe disruptions. So this applies heavily to urgent medical supplies, critical vehicle spare parts, which are required to keep logistics fleets running. But even here, the law is remarkably precise. So the exemption explicitly excludes major automotive components like engines, gearboxes, and differentials, which is you can only import the peripheral parts to resolve the immediate breakdown. So ultimately, this directive marks a major evolutionary shift in Ethiopia's monetary policy by completely repealing older those looser frameworks. Specifically, Article 8 of the previous 2004 Proclamation Directive, the National Bank of Ethiopia is stabilizing the economy through institutionalized digital tracking. And the underlying economic message here is that Ethiopia actively wants your external capitals, it wants a diaspora engagement, and it wants foreign investment to drive industrial growth. But the Wild West era of unmonitored alternative currency imports is officially over. So if you want to build a business in Ethiopia, you must be prepared to play completely by the digital rules of the FEMoUS framework. Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comment below and stay tuned for our next discussions as we continue to track this fast moving economic shifts. See you next time.